Well, I couldn't be more delighted to be introducing our keynote speaker this year. I have known her for a very long time. I had the privilege of working with her when I worked at Red House Records. And it was always such a joy to work with that whole band. But I always loved every interaction and conversation I had, and in addition to the performances from Nicky Mehta. And I think the first time I heard her sing was at the famed Winnipeg Folk Festival, where the Wailin Jennys kind of began. And I was like, who is this? And I just assumed I didn't know because I was new to the Winnipeg Folk Festival, and it turns out they were a new band, and they were just starting out. And now it's a band that all of you, I'm sure, know, but you might not know as much about Nicky and all of the many hats she has worn in addition to being a founding and current member of the Wailin Jennys. Singer-songwriter, mentor to at-risk youth, Wailin Jenny, mental health advocate, Canadian. Let's hear it for Canadians. We love our neighbors. Juno winner, mother of twins, international touring artist, biracial, children's book author, mental illness survivor, life partner, speaker, composer for contemporary dance, poet, band manager, university graduate, former dancer, Winnipegger, influenced by Jane Siberry, Lloyd Cole, the Smiths, and Sharon Olds. Product of British and East Indian ancestry, nature lover, realist, idealist, dreamer. I think she has some things to share with us. But mainly, I just want to mention that, again, especially in our conversations in preparing for this, and I was so excited just to see her again, that she has so much to say and is so insightful and has spent so much time on both sides of our border between Canada and the US. And with everything happening right now, I couldn't think of a better person to have on the stage sharing her story and experiences about what's happening right now, because there's a lot happening, and it impacts so many of us in our community and not just on this side of the border. So I'm really delighted to introduce our keynote speaker for our 2025 Farm Conference, Nicky Mehta.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? Having a good conference so far? Right on. Well, thank you, Ellen, for that very kind and flattering introduction. I have to say, when I sent Ellen the photo that was used in the program, it was a Jenny's promo photo, and I cut myself out of it. And without the context of the rest of my band, I look like I'm going to kill someone. So I apologize if that spooked anybody. Hope it didn't ward anybody off from attending. So to all of you here, thank you very much for looking past my Dirty Harry imitation and for showing up. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here speaking to you. I flew in from Winnipeg on Thursday, and I have to say the usual prep for getting into the country has, shall we say, expanded in scope. I spent a chunk of time disabling all my social media. I deleted texts, I moved screenshots into folders, I trashed emails and apps. And I'm no covert operative, but I have advocated for enough controversial groups or people or concepts, i.e. ones that support human rights, liberation, and peace, that I run the risk of being flagged and possibly refused entry, if I didn't at least temporarily close my big mouth while crossing the border. So that's where we are today in this time in history. And I put everything back up when I got in. So when the fabulous Ellen Stanley asked me to speak here, it was the end of February 2025, otherwise known as the good old days. And you know, stuff has happened here in the US and between our two countries and the entire world. So I can't imagine a more prescient invitation to speak on activism in the arts especially as freedom of speech and action have become increasingly under attack over the last few months, and especially as the close relationship between Canada and the States has been tested and various barriers have been erected. Border rules are changing frequently, with recent talks of borders actually being closed. Visa applications for Canadian artists can now cost thousands of dollars, more than they already did, and they take months longer and are not guaranteed to be granted. So what used to be a seamless entry to and from our countries has become fraught. It is particularly hard to witness this because of how intertwined our countries have been, particularly in respect to our industry. When you think of Folk Alliance itself, it would be not what it is without the interplay between all of our artists and our industry people. We have always been stronger because of our collaboration and our shared opportunities, and I'm hoping we can still figure out how to keep that relationship strong. Fake borders be damned. So for now, I want to focus on how wonderful it is that we are here at this conference. We have some time to take a breath and reconnect with the reasons we do what we do. Last night, I was able to take in a little bit of Mac and Cheese's high-octane set. And I was so moved by the joy I was seeing on everyone's faces. I know I haven't been smiling from ear to ear much lately. So this beautiful moment made everything I'm about to talk about all the more true. For these few days, we get to be amongst people who understand how vital and life-affirming our work is, and who can help us explore and discuss the threat that it is under. And hopefully we can help each other process and validate how incredibly difficult it is to live in this liminal space between making big plans and sometimes wondering what the point of plans even are in the face of increasingly uncertain futures. Because at the best of time, our industry is one of few guarantees. But at a time like this, it is more precarious. And I don't mean to scare anyone or be a doomsdayer unnecessarily. I just know that it is accepting and facing the uncertainty that leads us to the right action for ourselves and those around us. And I do believe we have power and agency, even with the threats we're facing today. So for now, let me focus on all of the ways that music deeply affects us and the world around us, because I think we often forget and underestimate how vital our role is. These are things you probably already know, but they always bear repeating. There are countless artistic genres and artists, but few get to showcase their big ideas through a medium that has the reach music has, delivering these ideas to us wrapped in such gorgeous sounds and words. Though arguably every art form can offer food for thought and transformation, I believe that it is only music that weaves its way so deeply into our souls, defines our lives, and like a time machine, can return us to our former selves in such a profound way. It's also one of the only art forms that creates community in real time and sustains that over time. Folk musicians contribute to the social fabric like town criers, ringing bells and reporting on the news of the day. As Nina Simone famously said, an artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. We're the truth tellers, the oracles, the innovators, and the emotional guides. As live performers, we hold tremendous power on an emotional, physical, and social plane. On a physical level, singing regulates the nervous system of the singer. And it is not hyperbole to say that in a concert hall or a theater or a club, the energetic confluence of musician and audience member is literally a healing exchange. We've always known that intuitively, but to have brain science research confirm this is exciting. Science tells us that sharing in music and laughter bonds us to each other on a cellular level. So it only makes sense that music, especially folk music, is an ideal arena for sharing our ideas on the state of humanity, the pains of it, the promise of it, in such a way that the heart hears it before the mind can argue with it. Whether you are a songwriter, performer, radio station, publicist, record label rep, or artist manager, you are part of an industry that legitimately helps change the world for the better. By virtue of existing in a creative space, various needles get pushed by your efforts. What is creativity if not the generation of new ideas? And what is progress if not the imagining of new, better worlds and ways of being? James Baldwin said, "The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you alter, even by a millimeter, the way people look at reality, then you can change it." So in the context of social change, unless you're Kid Rock or Ted Nugent, you're part of the resistance against oppression. The act of creation itself is resistance at a time when tyrants are trying to silence artists. I heard it said that art is a threat to fascism because fascism is a failure of imagination. You guys doing all right at the rave back there? There can be some dancing at the back if you want to go for it. To create in the face of authoritarianism is to rebel, even if that rebellion at times has to be coded. Bringing light and understanding and joy during this time is crucial, both for artist and audience, as is committing ourselves to the work needed to bring about peace, because there is no peace without justice. So to make and share music is by default being an activist, but rarely is that the extent to which many musicians go. There's Sinead O'Connor ripping up a picture of the Pope on live TV, Bruce Cockburn singing about self-defense in the Guatemalan refugee camps, Aretha Franklin and her anthems for the civil rights and feminist movements. It's Tanya Tagaq throat singing about indigenous sovereignty and climate change, Neil Young calling out government corruption and refusing to have his music co-opted by the administration, and Alison Russell speaking out about her abuse history and championing the work of other Black female musicians. It's artists refusing to perform at venues funded by major banks or starting petitions to governments about the use of AI in the creative industries. But it's also labels giving their artists fair deals. Radio stations diversifying their playlists, presenters bringing together touring artists and local musicians for workshops and talks, bandmates putting aside their egos and serving the songs and the audiences and themselves. Songwriters addressing difficult emotions in a way that breaks people open and gives them strength to make their own contributions. Activism can mean so many different things, and the trickle down of our efforts is endless and often unknown to us. So I want us to ask ourselves 3 questions today. What is this time in history asking of us? What do we owe each other as human beings? And what is our role as artists and industry in creating change right now? Now, before we take a look, I want to give you some background on my path, particularly because my life has been a series of unlikelihoods that have all added up to this unexpected bonkers career I've had. Looking back, the clues were there, and I encourage you, particularly when you might be going through times of feeling lost, to do a similar accounting of your life to find your clues. Usually that kind of personal accounting happens on one's deathbed, precisely when course correction is unavailable. So doing it sooner rather than later might be exactly what you need to know where you want to go if you've lost your way. I never aspired or planned to be a professional musician. I had certainly performed my whole life, from being a classically trained ballet dancer to a terrible actor to an amateur poet. But I was always a singer. I realized that I had been harmonizing since I was about 4 years old when I heard an Elton John B-side, and for what I thought was the first time, and discovered that I knew the entire harmony like a native language. Harmony singing came easily to me. It was like breathing, and I loved it so much. That was clue number 1. I had always been a champion of the underdog as well, very sensitive and prone to giving impassioned speeches, even as a child, about injustice and how things should be. I remember pacing behind my brother's losing hockey team's bench, silently railing against the fact that no one would listen to a pep talk from a 7-year-old girl. Their loss, I mean, come on. I was a biracial kid, half South Asian, half white, who faced alienation from pretty much every direction. A neurodivergent kid at a time when such qualities were punished. I actually asked for the lights to not be super bright and fluorescent because that is just not okay. When I was 13, I lost family in the bombing of an Air India jumbo jet. My 2 teenage cousins and my uncle and aunt were 4 of 329 civilians, mostly Canadian citizens of South Asian descent and their children, murdered by Sikh militants and who placed a bomb in a suitcase. It was the largest terror attack in Canadian history, and yet to this day, 40 years later, most Canadians know almost nothing about it. It's almost certainly because it was a plane full of brown people. And despite the fact that they were almost all Canadian citizens, the people aboard that flight were not considered Canadian. In fact, our Prime Minister at the time, Brian Mulroney, called the Prime Minister of India to send his condolences. So my desire to speak out against racism and advocate for the subjugated was informed very much by this, and I went on to write songs about it and about the stories of other oppressed people. These early experiences made me passionate about social justice. Clue number 2. Fast forward to university, where I dove into a degree called Communications, Culture, and Society, a combination of media theory, sociology, and cultural studies, which spoke about how human beings make sense and meaning of their world through movies, music, and other mediums. It was the kind of degree that is endlessly fascinating and virtually useless. Unless you became a professor, which I both wanted and didn't want. I did not want to preach to the converted in faculties stuck behind ivory tower walls. I wanted to be out on the streets, finding out about others and their meaning making, writing and speaking about the human struggle for self-actualization so as to create bridges between people, to unite people. That's clue number 3. In my final year of university, after suffering the first of many bouts of depression in my life, I opted for a year off and moved to Toronto to do some backup singing. And it started me on my path to music. But I tried everything to stay away from music because I didn't think a music career was possible or realistic. I returned to Winnipeg, got a photography diploma, I volunteered and worked with Child and Family Services and applied to grad school. And during this time, I started playing the guitar and formed my first band at the age of 24. So a little late to the game. I remember organizing and playing a benefit to support the fight against a proposed piece of legislation which would have allowed corporations unparalleled rights to engage in financial operations without concern for citizens' rights. And after a brilliant speech by one of the activists who was out on the front lines, I told her that I wished I was better at that kind of work. And she said something that has stuck with me ever since. She said, "You keep singing your beautiful songs so that you can inspire all of us to keep going." And that's when I realized my role. It didn't mean that I couldn't pursue social justice work. Just that my contribution as an artist first and foremost was a valid and invaluable piece of the puzzle. I went on to write and record a solo album that got traction within the Canadian music industry. It was full of songs navigating grief and continued a lifelong tendency to write about things that many people find difficult to talk about. That is a form of advocacy, even if it's not the intention. I am unofficially known as the Dark Jenny, which sounds kind of racist, except that I came up with it. And it mainly refers to my focus on death in my music. Incidentally, I came to learn that my solo album was used in more than one palliative care unit, a fact of which I am very proud, and a good example of how one's songs can help people in ways that we never dream of. All the while, I continued to volunteer in the mental health field and raise money for arts and youth organizations through my shows and wrote for various publications about my experience as a fledgling touring artist, I attended Folk Alliance, I got an official showcase, and was on my way to what I hoped would be a long and successful solo career. And then one day I joined forces with Ruth Moody and Kara Left in Winnipeg, and for what we all thought would be one night of collaborating on each other's tunes. And it turned into 2 sold-out shows. And when the artistic director of the Winnipeg Folk Festival, who was in the audience that first night, hired us for the festival, it started what turned out to be a career that we've never been able to catch up to. We've been very lucky. We worked hard, but we've had a lot of opportunities. And we're about to celebrate our 24th anniversary this January. Thank you. And we're going into the studio next year, so I don't do many solo shows these days. I'm too busy with raising my twin 16-year-old boys, who I hope will become activists themselves. However, their passion at the moment is roasting me. It's a full-time job for them. The other day, one of them said that while he thought it was great that I was a professional musician, he just wished it were in a cooler genre. He now lives in the shed in the backyard. Going on the road is a greater joy than you can possibly imagine, actually. So my focus beyond my band has included training to be a crisis counselor, to volunteer on our local crisis line, which is an amazing experience if you ever can do that. It's so great. Continuing to mentor at-risk youth and advocate for Indigenous rights. And I released a children's book, as Ellen mentioned, and I've been pursuing other writing opportunities. And all of this informs my songwriting. But I want to go back to something I did when I was 23. That has greatly influenced my life ever since. Back then, I was struggling to find a path for myself in a what color is your parachute kind of madness. And I happened upon a little book about creating a personal mission statement. The statement was to be short and to the point, and the kind of sentence that a 12-year-old could remember, very simple. And one that would encompass several areas of life. And the idea was that this statement would act as a litmus test of sorts and guide all of one's life choices. Now, I don't remember what my original mission statement was because my mind is not as sharp as a 12-year-old's, sadly. But it was something to the effect of, to comfort, be a light, and build bridges for healing in communities. And for a long time, it was the standard by which I measured everything I did. It was there before I settled on music as a career, and it was the lens through which I saw all career possibilities. And once I was committed to music, it helped me often. If I was nervous before a show, I would remind myself of this statement. I would remember that I wasn't there to impress people, but to comfort them. It worked incredibly well and meant that I was singing from exactly the same place from which my songs originated. Congruency like that is very powerful, so having that statement at the ready has been so important. Fun fact, we did a particularly terrifying show with a Prairie Home Companion for their July 4th celebrations years ago, though it was filmed on the 1st of July, which is Canada Day. So it was sort of awkward to stand there and sing the Star-Spangled Banner, even though I know it word for word, and it is such a joy to sing. It really is. But I mention this show because Meryl Streep was the guest. We performed live in front of 15,000 people for a listenership of 5 million people. And the show was simultaneously being recorded for PBS's Great Performances. This was live, no big deal. I was to sing the lead on a beautiful song by Jane Siberry called Calling All Angels. And I was, for lack of a better term, shitting my pants. It was one of 3 times in my performing history where I would have opted to be shot dead on the spot than go out on stage, and I am not joking. It was that bad. But as I stood backstage trembling in fear, I reminded myself of that mission statement. I was there to comfort, connect, and be a light. And that created a clarity of purpose that carried me through that performance and many others. Now, mission statements can change because our circumstances and we change. So as part of preparing for this speech, I went through the process again. And sure enough, almost 30 years after my first go, my statement has changed somewhat. This is the new one: to stand up for, illuminate, and celebrate our shared humanity, and remind people of their own power to liberate themselves and others. And I have no doubt this retooling of my statement will help me navigate life going forward, especially in this time of great uncertainty. And I also know that my previous statement is still relevant and true. When you have a clear understanding of why you are doing what you're doing, you know how to navigate most situations, and you know whether new opportunities fit that framework. It is a cheat sheet reminder of your self-defined purpose, and I can't recommend it enough. Mission statements can point the way to realizing your most authentic self, for doing work that aligns with what you have decided is your highest purpose and your greatest contribution. If you want to know more about the book I used, come and talk to me later. For a number of years, because I was on the road with my band so much, I was unable to do any kind of volunteering at home. And the band's advocacy work was limited to disparate benefits. So we decided to join forces with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, in the States, and the Canadian Mental Health Association in Canada. And so for about 9 years, we had NAMI join us at each show, and I spoke about the organization, and then we would hold a raffle for Jennys merchandise. With the help of our audiences, we raised tens of thousands of dollars for this grassroots organization that really needs it. And I hope we helped to destigmatize mental illness just a little bit. About 3 years ago, we changed course somewhat when a world-renowned child psychologist and New York Times bestselling author and fan of the band's, Dr. Ross Greene, got in touch to see if we might be interested in working together to bring attention to his organization called Lives in the Balance. Now, I happen to have bought his book, The Explosive Child, when my boys were 2 and were a little too explosive for my liking. And I love the core of his approach, which was to say that there is no such thing as a bad kid. That challenging behavior in children is always about things like learning disabilities, neurodiversity, trauma, and lack of life instruction, and that the solution to this is working collaboratively with kids to build skills that can help them thrive. Lives in the Balance is the practical extension of that. It goes into schools across North America to work with educators to eradicate punitive measures like corporal punishment, which is still legal in 15 states. Isolation, expulsion, in dealing with behavioral issues in favor of implementing positive and supportive skill acquisition. We thought this collaboration would actually lessen the load on NAMI, so we began advocating and raising money for Lives in the Balance. Over the years, we've donated money from ticket sales to UNICEF and Doctors Without Borders when trying to address specific world conflicts or climate events. And I mention this because it's a very simple thing to do and brings your audiences into your efforts, as it's their presence, which is in part funding that. And that gesture actually means a lot to audiences, is our takeaway from that. I have to say that my proudest moments in this band are not even music related. They are the times when we made unpopular or difficult choices that cost us money, lost us fans, and even threatened our career. The times when we turned down lucrative music placements because we disagreed with the ethics of the companies. The 4 times we went off the road so we could each have kids, despite industry advisors telling us it would kill our career. It didn't. The times when we spoke out on social justice issues, some quite contentious, like Roe versus Wade being struck down, Black Lives Matter, or the genocide in Gaza. And we were verbally attacked by fans and unfollowed by some. There was the time when a choir sang on one of our songs without permission at the presidential inauguration, which was broadcast on all major networks. And when upset fans rightly questioned this, we released a statement that made it abundantly clear that we did not authorize this and that we strongly rejected the administration's attacks on vulnerable communities. Some of these live on our social media pages and probably make us targets. But at the end of the day, we try to make decisions that sit right with our souls, despite the price we might pay. And our audiences have continued to grow every year. Now, we are by no means perfect. We make mistakes all the time. So I tell you these not out of any sense of self-righteousness or boasting, but to illustrate that taking a stand does not necessarily mean losing opportunities. It is actually the kind of authenticity that draws people to you. Now, please knock on whatever wood that is near you, that we get our work visa for this year, because I don't want to stop singing in this country for all of the amazing people we know and love here. So many Canadians are supporting you guys. We love you guys, you know. If you get that impression that there's discord among people, among regular people, it's mostly not there. Ignore the self-righteous Canadians. We don't need them. But just remember that we are, you know, we're thinking of you guys, and we want to be here. So let's return to our questions. What is this time in history asking of us? I'm sure we all realize that we are in a pivotal moment in history where conflict and violence is at profound levels, here and globally. We are at a time when rights are being stripped away from our most vulnerable people, while oligarchs rampage unimpeded. Mere miles away, migrants are being disappeared, and we watch our governments uphold the supremacy of those who continue to hurt vulnerable citizens. But we are not powerless. Howard Zinn wrote, "To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It's based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness." So what is this time asking of us? Is it that we strive to make small choices to be brave? And what do those look like? To commit to speaking out in whatever way feels sustainable? Is it insisting on finding joy amidst the darkness while we advocate for human rights and broadcasting that joy to others? Is that another form of resistance? Can we find new communities that support us when our friends and families align themselves with groups we can't abide by? Can we commit to acts of mutual aid? What is this time asking of you and your skills and abilities? How will it show up in your work? And what act can you take that will give you comfort and agency simply because you acted? Number 2, what do we owe each other? This is an incredibly important question as we face increasing division. The way I see it is that on a general societal level, we owe each other recognition that every single one of us on this earth is a human being who deserves safety and freedom. And we owe each other the commitment to root out any social programming in ourselves that has taught us otherwise. This is a lifelong task. We owe underserved and persecuted people our attention and our advocacy. It is no secret that the folk community is still lacking diversity. So it can be the work of privileged communities like ours to first listen to the needs of our most vulnerable citizens as they define them, and then stand up for those who are being targeted right now. People of color, migrants, queer and trans people, the unhoused and poor and disabled. Those communities have a lot to say about these times, having lived forms of tyranny for their whole lives. So listening is paramount. More and more people are taking up the work of supporting targeted communities as these times expose inequities and cruelty, which up until now were often hidden from view. And it is incredibly heartening to see people coming together in an unprecedented way. For artists, playing benefits, writing songs about human rights, teaching songwriting to underserved communities, actively seeking out diverse voices for input and opportunities are just a few options of how we can support people who are often excluded from important spaces. We owe each other unlearning our biases, actively hearing each other and being willing to be corrected. And I can't stress that last part enough. We have all been brought up, all of us, in a society that is inherently racist and sexist and ableist, and it will take time to excise that. We owe each other grace and patience when that bias inevitably comes out despite our best efforts. And we owe those who have suffered from that bias the right to not have to teach us how to be better. We must own it, carry on, and keep working. And while we do, we owe ourselves mercy and gentleness as we find our way through this challenging time. There's such joy to be found in coming home to our humanity because of all this effort. And while some of what I am saying here may seem unrelated to music per se, all of these social justice actions I listed are fueled by the same love and empathy that is the core of all great art. It draws from the same well. There's a reason why political campaigns use anthems for their candidates. Nothing fires up people's emotions more passionately and quickly as music. So we owe each other our best contributions in these fights for justice. And we owe our fellow musicians who are speaking out our best efforts to raise our voices so that everyone is made safer in the collective. Number 3, what is our role as artists and industry in creating change right now? Frederick Buechner is responsible for one of the most influential quotes in my life. I'm paraphrasing a little. The place you are called to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. Your most authentic and meaningful and often joyful purpose is always going to matter to someone. And for many of us, that place of deep gladness is our music or the supporting of music we find important. The world will always need singer-songwriters willing to mine the human condition for truth. The world will always need the comfort of voices and strings and drums to survive brutal times. What do you bring? As a side note, I spoke with Lucy Isabel, an artist and president of Surfa yesterday, who is actively trying to draw younger artists from all walks of life into the organization and offer them guidance and support with an emphasis on mental health as they navigate the industry. And it is exactly that kind of forward thinking and advocacy that will be so important to keep our industry current and growing. Like-minded folks here should seek her out because this kind of approach is especially important for smaller organizations, and creating a hive in this regard will help everyone. Music and art are the mediums that make survival worth it. They are the reminders that we can always find beauty and be beautiful, even when we're surrounded by ugliness. Music matters especially at times like this. In the words of Bertolt Brecht, in the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing about the dark times. For any of you who find yourselves afraid and discouraged about what is happening in the world right now, take your time with your own heart, and then please shine your formidable light for others to find their way. If you bring levity, if your music makes people dance and forget their worries enough to recharge and do their own important work, then you are moving the needle. If you are a songwriter or someone who supports songwriters, whose music allows people to feel and connect with their worries and their sadness and know they do not carry them alone, then know you too are moving the needle. Anyone who has ever imagined a better world or a better way of being human and can describe it vividly and set it to music is helping to show us the way through. As you navigate this period, remember the power of what you bring to this fight. Finally, I'll leave you with words from a poem by the late, great Andrea Gibson, someone who only truly found the joy of life after they were diagnosed with terminal cancer. Friend, you are who taught me that a difficult life is not less worth living than a gentle one. Joy is just easier to carry than sorrow, and you could lift a city from how long you've spent holding what's been nearly impossible to hold. This world needs those who know how to do that, those who can find a tunnel with no light at the end of it and hold it up like a telescope to show that the darkness contains many truths that can bring the light to its knees. Grief astronomer, adjust the lens. Look close. Tell us what you see. Thank you.
Nicky Mehta, everybody. I think we all needed to hear that. Well, what do you think? We might, do people have questions for Nicky? And who knows, we might get a song as well. We'll see what happens. But first, any questions? And I'll take this mic so you can have this.
Anyone?
Yeah,
Okay, and I'll repeat them since we don't have a roving mic,
I
okay?
can just shout.
Okay.
I love the thing that you want to do when you're up there singing for people. What is it? Comfort and shine a light. What was the thing that you?
The original mission statement was, that's a good question. It was to comfort, be a light, and, oh my gosh, there again, I cannot remember. Build bridges. You guys are all way smarter than I am about my own thing. Anyway, yes, that's close. To comfort, be a light, and build bridges for healing in communities. There you go. Anyone else?
Any other questions? Oh, yeah, there we go. Miguel?
So, other times and nearby nation states in adjacent cultures, and specifically I'm thinking of the 70s in Brazil and the MPB movement. So, in contrast to music in the States, where oppositional music or protest music was, was confrontational, there, under life and death, literally, music became beautiful, but also incisive.
Mm-hmm.
Where have you found inspiration in that? Where have you found, as an artist and a songwriter, your own sort of path towards the balance between, screaming into the pillow or out the window versus maintaining that sense of beauty and bringing the beauty out of the dark tunnel?
That is a good, multifaceted question. I think with music, like with the actual songwriting, that it has to be beautiful, period. Like, it doesn't matter what you're saying. It has to be, you can't, we're obviously not going to write and have the message be the only concern. And I hope I'm going to answer this properly. But like, I've written a fair bit about Indigenous rights and Indigenous history in Canada. And, the message is there, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm not sure I know how to answer that exactly. Like, if you can you clarify exactly? Am I getting there? Like, with what
you're getting there. It's just that we have a cultural tradition here of kind of standing on a soapbox and yelling out loud with our fists in the air.
Yeah.
And in Brazil specifically, during that era, the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Under a brutal military regime, something unique happened, right? The protest became expressed in beautiful melodic tonalities,
and was there any overt statements? Because once you're under a regime,
it was poetic.
yes, and so that's when I mentioned coded. When I mentioned coded songs, that's kind of where we're going, because at this point in time, you can still speak out to some degree, whether that's social media posts or your songs. But when you start the way that things are going right now, and it's happening in Canada to some degree as well. The most recent threats about any kind of anti-fascist, anti-capitalist, anti-Christian, anything, you're labeled a domestic terrorist. So right now, I'm considered a terrorist here. Yeah. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? So at a certain point, it's about weighing what you think you can get away with, because you become a legitimate target. And then if you can't, is to take it underground to a certain degree, right? Like whether that's the coded word. There are times when we're on stage when we can't say certain things. And so, in cases where we can't speak out about conflicts, it's just to say every child on this earth deserves safety, right? So that the people that know what you're talking about hear it. And the people that are opposed to that, they don't necessarily, they can't prove you're talking about anything, like so it's that kind of thing. We do have to juggle some of that, and I think that's gonna increase for a while. So it's just being smart about it, really, and to take chances. I mean, like I say, like the stuff that we have a visa application that's in right now, and we haven't heard anything about it, and we have a tour in November. That's the start of that. We have a full year worth of shows booked. And we have a tour in November, and we do not know what's happening with our visa. So the conversation with my bandmate is, do we take down our posts that are controversial? Because that doesn't feel right to us. It doesn't feel right to us. It doesn't feel right to our fans. We're thinking of our fans as well. It's like especially all of our, queer and trans, LGBTQ fans, our fans that are of color. To take that down, what is that saying to them? So we think about those things very deeply. And, we also want to be here. We also want to be singing for people because really that's the feedback we're getting from our crowds is we need you to be singing to us, we need you to be comforting us. And we don't want to stop doing that. So it's a day by, and we were talking about this, I was talking about this earlier, is that it's changing so fast. It's like, I could wake up tomorrow morning and find out that some new piece of, legislation's come out or executive order or whatever, and that's going to drastically change what is happening for me as an artist. So it's tough. Yeah. But yeah, you just have to adjust, keep adjusting. Yeah.
Alexa?
Have the Jennys taken their music off Spotify, and why not? Are you talking about it?
We are in the process of talking about that. Like we are, there are more and more reasons. I keep, it's the new stuff. They're like.
Yes.
Oh,
sorry. We will definitely repeat the question. So, Alexa asked if the Jennys have talked at all about taking stuff off Spotify, and if so, why or why not?
Yeah, so we talked about that quite a while ago when it was just that the payout for artists is so pathetic. We're kind of prisoners to some degree to these streaming services. To some degree, you can always find agency in that. But when you've built up a following, like we find that our audiences these days, 2/3 of them are new. It's crazy. And it's like, where are they coming from? Well, they're coming from places like Spotify. They're coming from streaming services. So it's, again, that balance between career and doing the right thing. So, and then since then, now it's, investing in military AI and there's something, advertising for ICE. Like, it's bananas. So there's, it's getting to the point where it's like, we can't justify this anymore. So we're just trying to figure out what the bits and pieces are of what needs to change, where do we go, how do we bring people along, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I'm in the back in the dark, so you might not see me, but I wanted to ask the question, what is the book, what the mission statement?
It's called The Path. And I have, you know what? I actually took a screenshot of it on my phone because I knew I would forget the full name.
Just in case some of you didn't hear that, the question was, what is the book that has about the mission statement?
So it's called The Path, Creating Your Mission Statement for Work and for Life. And the author is Lori Beth Jones. And just a fair warning to anybody who has a problem with organized religion, it's by the author of Jesus CEO, which I find it odd because I'm not religious, and I find it odd that I actually picked up this book and saw that and kept it. It's very strange. I'm almost wondering if it was marketed differently like 23 years ago. But so, and she throughout the book is talking about scripture and stuff, but it's not like that's easily skipped over. So the real core of it is there, and, unless you have severe religious trauma, which is a thing, it's doable, and it's fantastic. And you can, basically the way of doing the mission statement is within the first 100 pages. So, but there are other really cool exercises that you can do in that book. Yep.
Yeah.
So you said you don't want to just preach to the choir, but can you talk a little bit about how you can use the choir to help preach your message?
Oh, I love that. I'm going to repeat that in case anyone didn't hear that. The question was about how Nikki said not preaching to the choir, but the question was how can you use the choir, right, to amplify the message?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, the hope is that the choir is already doing some stuff, you know. But I think, like, here's a good example today. Like, I don't think I said anything today that you guys haven't thought of on some level. But I know that, like, when I see a speech and someone's just bringing everything together and reminding us, because, you guys know how it is to be in this industry. It's risky, it's challenging, it's troubling, it's exhausting at times. And we forget, like, I forget all the time. We have fans telling us that we matter in ways, I forget it all the time. So I think it's really good to hear that from people. So I think speaking to the choir actually really is still very important. And the hope is that, that your choir will hear something that they haven't heard said exactly that way, and it'll kind of like light a little spark for something different that can be done. So it's still worthwhile, I think, absolutely. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir mostly right now, right? It's still worth it. Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Any other questions? Well, Nikki will be around.
I will be around.
For dinner and around for this evening. But I don't know, does anyone want a song? I had a hunch.
You know what, Ellen asked me if I was going to play, and I don't play solo anymore, so I get so nervous if I have to play. I'm way more comfortable with speaking, which is really weird. But so because of that, I was, we were talking about, should I sing something with my guitar or should I do an a cappella? And I'm like, well, it's hard to do an a cappella because the a cappellas that I know I do with the Jennys. And it's hard to do a 3-part a cappella when it's just you. So, and this, here's a good lesson, I think. First of all, I got an email from a band who's familiar with the Jennys and just wanted to reach out and say hello. And so I eventually answered it because it was just so far behind, but they're a group called Blockhouse Valley. And so I emailed them back, and then earlier that day, I was in line to have lunch, and this young woman was behind me, and she just said, hi, who are you? What are you doing here? And then when she realized who I was, she was a fan of the band's. And so she had no intention of trying, she just wanted to be friendly, right? Emma Cook is her name, another artist. And we just had a really nice time talking, and we went and sat and, had lunch. And then later that day, Ashley from Blockhouse Valley came up to me at the bar and to say hello. And so I was thinking, 2 women that I just met who are singers, okay? Do you guys want to sing with me? So always do the thing, say hello, send the email, because you never know. I'm not promising them anything beyond this song, but it's still fun, right? It's still fun. So we're gonna sing Bright Morning Stars. Do people know this song? Okay, great. So I'm actually gonna sing a different part. Ashley's gonna sing my part, which is sort of interesting because I'm keep wanting to sing her part. So this is Ashley Glass and Emma Cook. And so for anybody who doesn't know, it's bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars are rising. Day is a breaking in my soul. And then it's where are our dear fathers? Where are our dear fathers? They are down in the valley praying. And then where are our dear mothers? They are gone to heaven a shouting. Day is a breaking in my soul. And then the last verse is just bright morning stars over and over. So it's quite easy, and you'll get it. Okay. Okay, ready?
Oh, where are our dear mothers? They are gone to heaven, a